welcome to Just Autism. Thank you for coming and exploring this journey with me. Today is officially my first post and my first vlog, so I figured we would start with obviously an introduction. So my name is Colleen and I am 43 years old and I'm actually the mother of 3. And my oldest, who is from my previous marriage, actually just turned 18 this past summer and will be going into her senior year, believe it or not. I cannot believe we are already at that point. And then leads me into our middle child, who is from my current marriage, and my oldest with my current husband is McKenna, who is going to be turning 10 in a few months and starting in the 4th grade. And then there is our youngest, who is Danny, who will be 9, and he will be entering what should be the 3rd grade, and he is our child that has autism. Needless to say, this journey has been long to date, and we're only 8 years into it with him, and we still have quite a few years left, I would hope. But it's been an experience, and it's been worth it. And I would do it again if I had to. But with that being said, it has been a process, and I feel that by doing something of this nature, not only can I help myself grow and be a better person and a better mother and a better wife and just a better person in general, but also help others, just to let them know that even though what we're going through, and even though the old cliche is always said to us that we're in this journey together, however, yes, in our minds we know that, but in our hearts we truly do feel like we are alone through this process a lot of the time. And that's a personal feeling for me a lot, because it's my child and it's personal to me. So how could somebody else even understand that? And by connecting with others, I'm hoping that, one, I can alleviate that feeling of being alone, but also let others know that what they're feeling and what they're thinking, there's somebody else there too that thinks and feels the same exact way just as I do and just as you do. So with that being said, let me start from the very beginning, and you'll kind of see why I have to go this far back, just so that you can understand my emotional and my thought process through this. So back in 2002, I had my oldest daughter, and in 2004, I made the decision to go through gastric bypass surgery. I have dealt with weight issues for a majority of my life, and ultimately around 2004, gastric bypass surgery was becoming more common. So I had explored it for over a year and had fought the battles with the insurance company, and finally got the approval to go through with the surgery in August of 2004, which was great, because ultimately I was doing this so that I could be healthy for my child, and that I didn't want my child having to worry about losing their parent at a young age or even at an older age due to something because of my weight issues. I have never regretted going through gastric bypass. I've had a great run with it. Obviously, it's been quite a while since I've had it, and the pocket has grown and a little bit of the weight has come back, but I've adjusted and I am okay with that. Why do I tell you this? Well, I kind of have a guilt with having that surgery and with regards to my son, and that kind of ties in down the line. But moving forward, having gastric bypass also came with a few price tags, and one of them was developing anemia. And at this point in time, I have pretty severe anemia, but during my pregnancies with McKenna and with Danny, my anemia wasn't as bad. I did go through infusions and transfusions during those pregnancies. I went through more of them with Danny than I did with McKenna. McKenna was born in 2010, and Danny followed not even a year later in 2011, and they literally are Irish twins. If you were to look at them, and we've been asked several times, are they twins? But they are not. They literally are 13 months apart, and they love riding on that, McKenna especially. However, when Danny was born, and he was born prematurely, I was battling my anemia. I also had hypertension that was setting in pretty much in my 3rd trimester, so the doctors were very much watching me at every point. At that time, the hypertension started to get very bad, and the doctors finally had made the decision in November to take Danny approximately about 5 to 6 weeks early, because Danny was due towards the end of December. So when Danny was born at I think it was 3.8 pounds when he was born at that time. And he was very long. He was 21 inches long, but very skinny. And they took him by emergency C-section because when I went in to have a non-stress test, they could not find a heartbeat, and they also were monitoring my blood pressure, and it was just going through the roof, and they were afraid for me as well. So the doctors made the decision and had the call and took him by cesarean. With that, we spent over 10 days in the NICU with him and had to watch him fight for his life, basically. He wasn't holding his platelet counts, and they kept dropping, so he had several platelet transfusions while he was in there. And every night we waited for the call to let us know that they were beginning the platelet transfusion. And every morning we waited for the answer to find out, did the numbers hold? And each morning it felt like we were told the numbers dropped again and the transfusion didn't work. And again, we would try again that evening, and the following morning, again, it didn't hold. So by the 7th day, I broke down and finally had to ask the question, what is going to happen? And are we going to leave this hospital with our child? And the doctor reassured us that we were, and he was going to try everything that he could to make sure that that happened sooner than later. By the second night after that question was asked, finally, Danny's platelet counts held, and he began to eat, and he was being responsive, and his poor little feet were so pricked up and so black from all the little pricks from having to do the test. And he was so sensitive, and that kind of carried on, believe it or not. And he did not like his feet being touched for so long. But we ultimately, on day 10, got to walk out of the hospital with Danny at 4.2 pounds at that point. So we went home with a preemie. All these clothes that I had bought that I thought he would be able to wear, never got to wear. I had to go buy all new clothes, have my mother run out and grab new clothes. And I remember before we left the hospital, there was one moment that signified the start of this whole journey for us. And I walked in after going home the night before from the NICU, getting little sleep, and waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning to get my daughters up and ready for the day. As soon as my father showed up to sit with the girls, I left to go back to the hospital to sit with him. And no sooner did I walk into the NICU to walk to his cradle, a doctor whom I have never met before, never had spoken to in this entire time I was there, basically came up to me and said verbatim, we did his scans on his brain, and we just want to let you know to expect that there's a possibility he's going to be retarded. Are you kidding me? First of all, who in this day and age uses the word retarded? And that is a word that just really gets under my skin, and I absolutely hate. Don't even say it in a kidding manner around me. And to have a doctor actually come to me and say that about my child while I'm still worried about what he is battling, I was like, are you serious right now? I broke down. I called my husband hysterically crying, saying, this doctor's here. I've never met her. I have no clue who she is, and she's telling us that our son's going to be retarded. Can you even believe she said this word? Like, are you kidding me? What are we going to do? I want to talk to Dr. So-and-so. I don't want her back in here. And with that, my husband just lost it and hung up the phone, called the head of the hospital and said, I don't know who that doctor was, but don't ever have them speak to my wife again, and get Dr. So-and-so on the phone to clear matters up. Needless to say, it made me wonder, did they see something on the scan then? And should I, instead of reacting emotionally to a word, had listened and asked more questions? But my mind wasn't there, and I didn't anticipate autism. So, how do you move forward from that? well, we go home. And for the next 2 years, we were in touch with Easter Seals, and they came out, and we knew that there was going to be delay, possibly with motor skills, possibly with just OT-PT, nothing really extensive. And Easter Seals was coming out just to do due diligence to make sure that he was on the correct paths. At that point in time, he was a baby. He started crawling on time. He started walking and babbling on time. So for me, there were no delays. He had a little bit of toe walking at that point, and they were a little worried about the limbs and how tight they were, but they were working with him, and we figured, okay, little PT, that'll go away, put him in shoes, we'll be fine. And I remember the day. He was sitting on the couch. He was just a little over 2 years old, and I remember talking to him and kind of trying to grab his attention, and he wouldn't even look at me. He was just in a blank stare off in space someplace. Didn't know where he was. And I thought, okay, he's just having an off day. Everybody has one. I'm not gonna bother. Maybe he's not feeling well. Take his temperature, double check that. And it goes on and on and on. So we continued to move forward, and we had been seeking advice from the local Easter Seals where we had moved to, as we had also currently moved. And they suggested the same thing, the OT and the PT, and that they would do a further evaluation down the line when he was just a little bit older, but to give him some time with the new therapist, and we did. And I remember we had gone out for the evening, and we had my sister-in-law babysit, and we came home, and she had pulled my husband aside to say, you know, I noticed something with Danny, that when he was standing in front of the television, I was calling to him and he would not answer, and he didn't recognize his name. And she said, I even walked up straight behind him and he didn't even flinch. And I'm like, okay, well, he could just be tuning you out. Like any kid does with any parent or anybody. Didn't really think much of it. And then came the point of where he stopped babbling. He stopped baby talking. And I thought that was just so odd. Like, one day he was chit-chatting away, doing his little baby talk with us, and the next, nothing, not a word. It was almost like he didn't know how to move his mouth. And I saw the fight in him, because I could see the little wheels are spinning, and I could see the mouth trying to move, but nothing's coming out. And I just knew. So I mentioned everything to the therapist and to the doctors, and they said, yep, maybe it's time that we talk to the schools about evaluating him and seeing what they're going to say, and then doing our own evaluation. And that leads into a whole other story. So please join me tomorrow for part 2 of the remainder of the introduction, and I will fill you in on our testing and what took place and what actually sped up our testing and where we were at today. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please take a moment and do so, and I look forward to continuing the journey with you. Take care, and I will see you again soon.